So then what else is missing from those U.S. media headlines? Here to help me out, Vijay Prashad. He's Director of International Studies at Trinity College. Thank you for being here. So I first want to start out with something we heard from the president today. He spoke to the American people at 2 p.m., around there. Here's a little snippet of what he said.
For over 4 decades, the Libyan people had lived under the rule of a tyrant who denied them their most basic human rights. Now, the celebrations that we've seen in the streets of Libya shows that the pursuit of human dignity is far stronger than any dictator.
My first question to you, is that what we're seeing in the streets of Libya right now, in the streets of Tripoli?
Well, I think that what President Obama is talking about is a sort of wish fulfillment. NATO has been blocked for 10 years in Afghanistan. NATO has a bad record of trying to pursue political goals through military means. And finally, in the case of Libya, they've been able to create a kind of propaganda situation where NATO is now, as Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said today, NATO has demonstrated that it is the most effective tool in the world's arsenal. This to me is remarkable. It is a form of hubris and propaganda of a scale that one has not come to see at least since the kind of egg on the face of the Bush administration after the entry into Iraq. The situation in Libya is far more complicated. There is a sense from people that the rebellion that might come now from the Gaddafi side is germinating. After all, the Khamis Brigade simply dissolved rather than stand and fight, to defend Tripoli. So the question that we need to be asking isn't, that this is the kind of the emergence of a human freedom narrative, but we should be asking, is Tripoli in 2011 Panama in 1989, when indeed the regime dissolved very quickly and the leader was sprinted off to an American prison where he faced trial and now sits in prison? So is this Panama 1989 or is this Iraq 2003, when again the Saddam regime seemed to have collapsed immediately and was quickly mutated into a rebellion and an insurgency that went on for 4 horrible years till 2007. So rather than celebrate this as a liberty without comment, I would ask, is this Panama 1989 or is this Iraq 2003?
Well, which do you think it is? And what then is the best outcome that can be achieved?
My fear is that this is going to be Iraq 2003, and that people in the city of Tripoli insert other parts of the country who remain loyal to the Gaddafi regime have been given no reason to basically put down arms and reconcile with those who are coming into their cities. In other words, given that there is no political platform for reconciliation, I fear that the fighting is going to continue. A lot more people are going to be killed. As it is, NATO has upped the fighting and now revealed that via the Qataris and via special forces troops on the ground, they have been, providing technical assistance, providing more sophisticated, means of being in touch with warplanes for bombing. I mean, the Qataris have been on the ground right through. In fact, they took sections of the Benghazi rebellion to Qatar to be trained. So I fear that this is going to set a terrible precedent. Already armories have been raided. RPGs have been stolen from the armories. Is this going to be Iraq 2003 or even worse? Is this going to be Kabul after the fall of the Taliban, when that civil war was grievous and hurtful for the people of Afghanistan?
So do you think that then the United States is going to get into a multi-year occupation, and is that what you're saying?
There is no question that the United States is going to find itself in much more than mission accomplished circa 2003. That the United States is going to find that it's not so easy to overthrow a regime and then assume that those who you have backed are going to suddenly create stability on the ground. Things are going to be very complicated. It's hard to have a definitive answer right now, which is why I find that the sort of jubilation is one-sided and is unable to see that things are going to be far more complicated. There is an amnesia that infects the media across the Atlantic world. After the mission accomplished banner of 2003, I would have thought that they would have learned something. But obviously, 8 years later, they've learned nothing.
That was going to be my question to you, because when we look back on Iraq, the U.S. media says, we learned lessons from that back then there was this jingoistic coverage of the U.S.'s role there, and then it was found out that was all wrong. And fast forward, and today, you see a similar kind of simple analysis in the mainstream media where they're talking about NATO victory and celebration and showing these images on repeat of the rebel supporters in Green Square. So why do you think other facts are out there? We know that people are saying that civilian infrastructure was targeted and that 1,300 people possibly died in these airstrikes and that civilians are among them. So why is the U.S. media ignoring these facts?
Well, the United States media has a very simple narrative of freedom versus authoritarianism. And if you simply have that narrative, what appears to have happened today is that authoritarianism was defeated by freedom. What you don't get from the United States media is how difficult and complicated it's going to be, absent the leadership of Gaddafi now, for this new government to go forward. And you have to consider that the Benghazi Transitional Council has said it would like to have elections within 8 months. That seems to me overly optimistic. We have to also consider that will the people of Jebel Nafusa, who conducted some of the most virulent fighting over the last day and a half, people of the so-called Berber ethnicity who have been marginalized in Libya, will they be marginalized again? There are some very detailed questions. The devil, by the way, is always in the details. And it is the details that are being here put into the drawer. And this simple narrative of freedom versus authoritarianism is allowing the media to once again rehabilitate ideas of interventionism for humanitarian reasons and to sort of put the Bush legacy behind. I'm afraid the Bush legacy is going to come back again tomorrow.
So you think that history is going to repeat itself, that nothing has changed?
If you don't learn from history, it repeats itself. If you learn from it, it is patient with you.
And just yes or no, you're saying that the U.S. and the U.S. media and the U.S. government has not learned those lessons?
Oh, I think far from it. I think that this desire to maintain the integrity of humanitarian interventionism and to allow aerial bombardment to give you an idea that freedom will come from it, this is an overwhelmingly powerful idea in the United States, and it is not something that no lessons will be learned of the failures of humanitarian intervention.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show. That was Vijay Prashad, Director of International Studies at Trinity College, with that analysis.